It's a good market. Also, Bangladesh is also connecting India and some part of India with Southeast, particularly through the maritime. We have a very strong sub-regional. Sub-regional means the BBIN. In the foreign affairs, international affairs, we use many nomenclatures. And don't get confused. These nomenclatures are basically trade economies they introduce. And you have a Professor Bhagwati, he says spaghetti balls and noodle balls. So sometimes, you get very, very confused with what this BBIN, ASEAN, BIMSTEC. But you have to take the, just to bear with me that these are some regional blocks or sub-regional blocks. 4 countries like BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, they are doing more closely trade. And some other non-trade issues like climate change, energy. We have a working regional, this ASEAN, BIMSTEC, and IORA. I will certainly spend some time on ASEAN. BIMSTEC is a Bay of Bengal community. BIMSTEC is a Track 1 initiative. We had a summit, at the end of August in Kathmandu, where Prime Minister Modi spoke. He gave a plenary address at the BIMSTEC summit, and BIMSTEC countries, 8 countries, they are also doing pretty well. I will not talk about BIMSTEC much, but I have some slides to share what the BIMSTEC actually doing. Some of the countries in the BIMSTEC, like Thailand and Myanmar, is also part of ASEAN. And they are also part of India-ASEAN partnerships. IORA, if you look at our foreign affairs, what we are doing, actually, we are doing more look west now, not look east. What we are doing look west, it is basically the African country. And maybe in another occasions, I will speak about more India-Africa relations and what we are doing in Africa. IORA is the Indian Ocean Regional Association, particularly East African countries, with which India and Japan, we are doing more projects, more regional cooperation with ASEAN countries. So IORA, BIMSTEC, and ASEAN, they're working regionals. They're very active, with a very active, official projects, private sector's involvement. Yeah, thank you. What's the things that the new thing that we are looking at compared to 10 years back? 10 years ago, it was more trade, investment, economic relations. Prime Ministers realized that very difficult to crack, FTA, very difficult, because you need to have multiple discussions, sit down with the stakeholders, views, arguments, debate, discourse, all this continues. So like the BIMSTEC FTA is going on for 20 years, RCEP going on 6-7 years. It takes time. But if you need to do immediate anything, so Prime Minister and his team, they suggest that let's move from economic issues to a non-economic. So maritime cooperation, maritime connectivity, these are picking up the most interest. So Delhi Declaration, when we did ASEAN-India Summit in 25th of August this year, so it is focus of the Delhi Declaration that we will be working more into maritime cooperation, maritime safety, security, and maritime connectivity. 2 things that we see is coming up. Indo-Pacific, I will not spend much time here. Indo-Pacific is 4 countries presently in the lead role, which is the US, Japan, Australia, and India. We call Quad. They feel that, and obviously there are some reasons, we are coming up with more papers now, that you have so many FTAs, bilateral, regional, sub-regional, several of them, We need to club them together, present some agreement, some trade relations, benefit out of the economies of scale. So Indo-Pacific is about 42 countries, which starts from Africa, ends at the Peru, Chile. So this is the vast water bodies connecting Asia, Africa, and Americas with Indian Ocean and Pacific Oceans. So this is emerging. 10 years ago, you are not aware of the BIMSTEC or ASEAN or anything. So now you are thinking that these are the most prominent one, and we are discussing here. So maybe 10 years from now, we will be talking about the Indo-Pacific. Here is the most fascinating achievement is Japan and India closeness in terms of development of quality infrastructure, disaster resilient infrastructure financing, funding of project, technical assistance. So Japan and India, it's a good time, in officially many projects, so also the private sectors. So this is the new, some of the points of India's rising footprints globally. And this has been achieved most in the last 3 to 4 years. Let me come back to what are the uncertainties. The line curve is falling. Both are, the bottom one is the global investment and trade growth. Earlier one is the GDP growth. There are basically, Uncle Sam is thinking that we presented too much laissez-faire to the world. He feels that it is the world for the Americans. He feels that, and his team feels that, why should we subsidize the world growth from USA? So we need to look at very closely what China is doing. And he has some points. I'm not going there. So China-US trade war was actually making us very, very worried what is going to happen. It is counterproductive. So far 100 billion, trade has lost. 100 billion trade for last 1.5 years lost. And any kind of perception survey, if you pick up OECD, World Bank, those who do the perception survey with much credibility, all are telling 2019 is the gloomy year. And be careful about your investments. So that's what we think, that there are lots of uncertainties coming up in the globally. Land in the middle of the sea and create an artificial island and telling that entire South China Sea is ours. So there are a lot of issues is happening. You cannot overfly. If you are flying from, say, if you take a night flight from Bangkok or KL to Hong Kong or maybe in Seoul or Tokyo, you have to move out from the region, and if you are shipping lines who are calling to Hong Kong or Korea or Japan, you have to keep out of that region in which China has created an artificial island. You can Google it. So China is telling that this island is mine, and you have to keep out 200-kilometer radius. It's my economic zone. So if your container vessels move 200 kilometers away from that zone, or your fly, then it means that you have to pay extra. So I believe those who are handling closely the maritime connectivity, they can tell you much bigger. So these are the implications. There are uncertainties, many more. So let me come to what ASEAN and India can do. USA has raised many trade embargoes, but in the globally, if you see the history, the southern countries like ASEAN, India, which we call it South-South cooperation, the southern solidarity, if they come together, we can even resist what the protections are increased or added by the United States of America in terms of standards, which are in discussion, in terms of many other the trade issues. So that is why ASEAN and India is very important. Not just ASEAN-India, bilateral FTA. ASEAN-India can do together if there are any global issues, climate change, for example, if there are issues on trade, like what is happening in the globally with the United States. So where are the ASEAN countries? The 10 countries, many of you have traveled, they're beautiful. Countries in Laos, Cambodia, several parts of Myanmar. I have traveled all of them. So most beautiful destination, not just for tourism, for many things, these are the countries. But let me see, penalized you with some statistics, the data, which is, you don't have to pick up anything. See, why I would argue about there should be more and more cooperation with India and ASEAN, because the variation. What are the variations? In terms of per capita income, in terms of the size of the economy, in terms of population, in terms of openness, in terms of GDP, you will find not all are in same boat. So, and who is in the bottom? I have placed India, which is the largest one. Just leave out Singapore. Singapore is a city, that can create when you draw an average line. So I think this is an area where we can do a more catching up. Means in terms of electrical manufacturing, the poles, the wires, they will be in demand in ASEAN market, 4 trillion economy. They don't have some of the countries, the CLMB, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, they don't have anything. And Calcutta is the nearest. So we need to connect Calcutta with ASEAN countries with a better physical connectivity. That I will present some slides I have. So from what I take, this is a 5 trillion economy, 5 trillion in current price in US dollar, and which is the next would be that, on top of it, what we will find USA with the 21 trillion, the China will be 10, and then This is the 5. So third largest market size. And the third largest market size, India is yet to explore. It is only IT companies like Wipro, TCS, or big manufacturing house like Tata or Mahindra. They could set up the plants, they could set up their franchises, but our MSMEs and more importantly, several other startups, they're yet to explore. So, so what this government is doing, to facilitate, because I am coming from a think tank, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs think tank, I should better present you the facts and figures which the government is doing. Government is on ASEAN, we call it the all-weather friend. There is no dispute at the border. If you have a border disputes, either maritime or on the land, your foreign policy, your defense policy is military, any kind of a cooperation, it doesn't sustain. With ASEAN, we have a maritime border. Our maritime border with Indonesia is very close, only 80 nautical miles. Very, very close. And we have a land border with Myanmar. We just cross Manipur, More, and then we land into the Tamu. And that's what, So it's very unique that a country, a region with whom we share land and maritime border. And to focus ASEAN, we have an activist policy. And I go China very often on the Belt and Road Initiative conferences, discussions. Many countries in the region, they look at activist policy. It's a great move which can compare with the Belt and Road Initiatives. So Belt and Road Initiatives, we're not going to discuss more on the PRI, where China is thinking about to invest 100 billion in physical infrastructure. Chinese are telling us that activist policy is actually investing on the human soft power in education, in terms of developing knowledge, that knowledge product. So activist policy, US Indo-Pacific strategy, China's Belt and Road Initiative, Japan is called, free and open Indo-Pacific, and India's activist policy. These are the 4 or 5 major, foreign policy debates that's been going on. So an activist policies, ASEAN is the pivot. And how India has achieved this way, it is not just over time, we have also learned by doing it. So 1991, we just opened, the liberalization. I don't want to go to that history book. So all the way 30 years, and we ended to 2018, step by step. We joined in several international organizations. India introduced International Solar Alliance. Many of you know about it. It is a role model now. Everybody is coming and joining in the ISA projects. So like that, India has a very strong resource, manpower to handle global issues. And quickly, when functionally what we have done with ASEAN. These, shaded blocks are the regional blocks, and the square is the FTA. Free trade agreement, we have bilateral, like India, Nepal, Bhutan, in the South Asia, in the BBIN. With ASEAN, we have a comprehensive partnership agreement with Singapore, India, Malaysia, in EAS, in Japan and Korea. So starting is that how do we build in the ASEAN? So these are the BBIN, SAR, BIMSTEC, ASEAN, EAS. Again, several nomenclatures. These are the projects government are committed officially to promote. So this is the way we are moving from center, which is in South Asia, and all the way to the East Asia Summit. East Asia Summit is where we have the United States of America and the Russia as well. So 18 countries, that is the world. And many of you have a trade interest. Quickly, SAARC, BIMSTEC, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India, ASEAN, RCEP. So if you make any sort of Venn diagram, China and India are coming, you cannot just ignore China. That's what I'm telling. If you tell that you cannot ignore China in Delhi, you have a problem of tomorrow, because I know why. But I have no problem here in Calcutta, where freedom of speech is very much well respected. So India and China, they're very much common, and you need to look at very closely what China is doing, and to learn from China, and also China from India as well. Why? Come 2050, then PPP terms, China and India all will be the 100 trillion economy, 2050. Maybe just 32 years ago from now, 2050, so not very far. So you can see that who will be ruling this century, probably the next, if climate change doesn't disappear, all of us. It is the China and India. United States will be third position. So cooperation, anything you do with China and India is must. I mean, we cannot just ignore. That is the point, I also will be telling you while talking about the ASEAN. Let me come to stop the China and India, touch you about with the civilization links. Because Sunilji told me that, Dr. De, please also talk about civilization, what it was. Ramayana, which we call, in Thailand called Ramkhain, etc., you will find. So they have adopted our, Indian civilization in their own way. Nalanda University, I don't tell you why. And several architectures, if you go to the Vietnam Maison Temple, and several one, you must have traveled to Angkor Wat. Several places, this is a Hindu mythology in terms of language. So the bottom line is that the ASEAN people, they look at this as a civilization link. They didn't destroy it, they adopted it. 99% of Indonesians' name, you will confuse that as Sanskrit persons, but they practice Islam. So, and a new child born, they give a Sanskrit name, not an Islamic name. So that is what, Indonesia protect the Hindu civilizations, in India protected Islamic civilization like Taj Mahal or any other things. That's the beauty. So, so you see, this is the Angkor Wat, Barbadu Temple, and we have, several of them. Sometimes pictures speaks well than the statistics. Several of, many countries in the 10 countries, one of them. Nalanda University, which we have, developed in the new form, presently in the Nalanda, Rajgir. And in the 25th of January, when we celebrated 25 years of ASEAN-India partnerships in Delhi, and the 10 ASEAN leaders, they were our chief guests. So we opened the stamps of the 10 countries, 10 Ramayanas. So these are stamps you maybe your kids can buy. We do several similar, cultural relations projects. The students coming from ASEAN countries, huge interest, huge. Many of the times I give lectures like this to the students, and big numbers, CII or several others. And if, Sunilji, if your organization would like to have similar kind of students coming here for capacity building, training, interactions, anything, we'll be, very much helpful to you, in terms of organizing those. But how do we have achieved 25 years? We started with just, Lookist policy, 1992, and then sectoral dialogue partner, and several ways we have crossed FTA, goods, services, etc., and then, this is a phenomenal progress. We have it silently. Whomsoever came in the power, when the Lookist policy was adopted, it was P.V. Narasimha Rao, the Congress party was there. But when the Vajpayee came, he didn't, destroyed it or spoiled it. He also took it over, so also the Prime Minister Modi. So this is the way, we have progressed, ASEAN and India, major milestones. Let me come about a minute about ASEAN. As I said in the beginning of my presentation, the ASEAN is celebrating a community. 10 countries, they realized that we should be better known as ASEAN, just like European. So that's the way they have a very strong agenda. And they have a national anthem, many of you may not be knowing. So 2-3 things they will be doing in by 2025 to reach the community. One, they are planning to have free flow of goods and services. So if you are an Vietnamese, you don't need to carry a Vietnam passport. You're just free, travel from Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, to anywhere in the ASEAN countries. Don't need any passport. There will be common currency, but there is a debate that we do not go for a common currency. There could be a common customs union, but there is some issues with Singapore and Brunei, because Singapore, Brunei, they have a zero tariff to our partners globally. So they have a very thick agenda to make it as a community in socio-cultural, political, and strategics and economics. Now, since ASEAN is doing well, there are many countries they are looking at ASEAN, like India, like China. So ASEAN presently have 10 dialogue partners. They call it dialogue partners. And like India, there are several others, European Union. They are a very, very active agenda, engaging them. One of it is the RCEP. And I, give some few points because there will be, you will be some interest about what the RCEP is India is doing, because electrical machinery equipment constructions, probably, ASEAN is doing well. The RCEP has 11 chapters, and it starts with goods, services, dispute settlement, intellectual property, etc., etc., etc. So these 11 chapters are negotiated. And this year, we could not sign it in November, but next year, after election, Indian election is over, India has to sign it. And there's no way, this time, countries have allowed India, yes, sorry, you don't have to sign for the domestic compulsions, but next year you have to sign. So RCEP is good. There is also another angle that through RCEP, China and India, they don't have a bilateral free trade agreement. China-India part of the APTA, which used to call the Bangkok Agreement, Asia-Pacific Trade Agreement, where China and India exchange the tariff preferences. But largely we don't do, so if RCEP is signed, there are issues that you need to listen to more with the Chinese imports. And you need to understand what the standards of the Chinese. Pharmaceutical exports, for example. So RCEP, is a very, very serious, should be the serious business for anybody who is looking at in the next round of overseas or global trade. 25th of January, we had this summit, Prime Minister Modi along with all the ASEAN leaders. They were our chief guests. It is the first time the 10 countries head were the chief guests of the Republic Day. It's very unique. And we have, did lots of events on 25th, 25th day. I'm going to skip that. One point, you can see that the ASEAN countries told us we would like to do more higher studies in India. So we have offered 100 scholarships to do the PhDs in IITs. And why India is so nice to ASEAN, or so India is so much with ASEAN is so much with India, because ASEAN looks at India as a counterbalance with China always. So this is, we have to be, very much receptive to ASEAN request. We have to be very benign to ASEAN what they want. So we have actually opened very much many initiatives for the ASEAN itself. And we have also agreed to set up an inter-university network. So Calcutta University, Delhi University, several universities will be now directly talking with ASEAN universities. They have with them, and we have 3 funds. I don't know whether you will be utilizing it. $100 million fund for ASEAN India Fund. This $100 million fund also is good for associations like IEEMA. They may not be aware of it, that some of it is actually we have kept. Probably we have not identified how much the percentage is in terms of capacity building, training. For example, if IEEMA would like to take a delegation of 10-20 people to ASEAN countries, normally what you do, you can pay from IEEMA budget. But here, if you approach to ASEAN India Fund, and the fund is being managed by the ASEAN Secretary, not by India. And it is easy to pick up the money from there, because most of the 100 million fund started with almost 80 million. It started 5 years back. 80 million is unused. It's just lying in, just picking up the interest. So please look at it, how you can utilize. We have a fund, a Science and Technology for Development Fund, Green Fund for the environment. Several plan of actions. These activities are not just drawn by Ministry of External Affairs. All the ministries, starting from agriculture all the way to science and technology, they have a project running with ASEAN. Just last week, science and technology, they had ASEAN India cyber security conference, and this time they even didn't invite Ministry of External Affairs. So that means that every ministry, they have their ASEAN agenda very much there, and Ministry of External Affairs, they don't interfere at all. Some of the set projects, I will come to the bottom one on the connectivity. Maybe some of you have interest. Other than that, we have air connectivity projects, maritime, trade facilitation, customs cooperations, RCEP, and FTA. Air connectivity, I have some slides which I will share. These are the projects that we are doing. Let me come to the trade and economic cooperations quickly, because I have already consumed most of my time. I think this is, but just quickly, the red, the bar is the one when we signed the FTA with the free trade agreement in 2010, and that time our total bilateral trade was 52 billion. And you can see presently it has reached to 81. Mr. Misra, he raised the question how much you are doing it. So this is the one, signing FTA. But if you ask me, are we having a trade surplus or a trade deficit? Yes, we have a trade deficit. But as a trade economist, I don't, too much give, sensitive to, or I'm not too much worried about if we have a too much, deficit or a surplus. We have a deficit because we are consuming parts and components from ASEAN countries that goes in the productions, manufacturing for computer, mobile phone, telecom equipments, and then again we are sending it back to the ASEAN. These sort of value chains are coming up. So deficit and surplus probably is a very short term. We may be looking at maybe medium or long term separately on another forum. So, and if you look at the country-wise, that's also there is a variation. Some are, the major trade partners are Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. The rest, which is a phenomenal development in the Vietnam, any kind of, just a good example, the Vietnam-India trade volume has crossed about 12 billion. 5 years back, it was about 5. Why 5 to 12 billion? And that's also we are consuming more. One product. What is the product? You know that any computer cartridge, particularly by HP, all manufactured by the Vietnamese. Any Dell computer you order going into Amazon or anything, it is manufactured by Dell company in the Penang Islands. The car you drive, Suzuki, Ertiga, or any sedan by this, Toyota or Honda, most of the parts and components, gearboxes, wiper, side mirror, tire, all are imported from region. So this is a kind of a value chain, and there is no harm in it. That is that why we import all these we could have produced here. There is no harm in it because I have extensively worked with the Tatas. They feel that look, we are not worried at all because we have also doing the same formula what Daikin is doing for manufacturing, assembling air conditioning equipments, mostly borrowed from their plants in Thailand. So companies are also restructuring, the way they look at the business. I just keep, I thought to spend on the investments. See the figures, 2000 to 2018, almost about 75 billion that India has attracted from ASEAN countries. Many of it is a rerouting. I know that money going to Singapore and then coming back, round-tripping element is there. But see the figures that the Malaysians and the Vietnamese even, they are investing in India. So this is a development that we are telling them, these countries, that you come and invest under the Make in India scheme, Digital India scheme, and invest here, and then you will export. That's what picking up. But it needs time. 3-4 years is too small to make any judgment. Distribution, I skip last part of my presentation in 5 to 10 minutes, just some figures and statistics, and then I conclude. What it's giving us in terms of value chain for the medium and small enterprises. If you look at the northeast part of India, where it is physically connected, we did a very extensive study with the World Bank. Recently, I was part of the team member. Cement, floriculture, pharmaceutical, bamboo, rubber, health, education, tourism, horticulture, and processed food. These are the industry clusters. Ministry Development of the Northeast, the World Bank, practitioners like us, we identified connecting supply chain producers to the suppliers from ASEAN countries and northeast part of India. So these are the products or the clusters that we can promote which have a market in ASEAN countries. That's, in a simple way I can do. If we take care of the infrastructure connectivity and the trade. On the trade, we have a FTA, and on the border connectivity and infrastructure, we haven't done much. And I will spend some time on it. But since we are speaking at the World Calcutta, so I thought that let me, dig out more products looking at the northeastern region, West Bengal and Bangladesh line, northeastern region, West Bengal and Myanmar line, because two separate, because with Bangladesh you have a SAFTA. You don't have ASEAN-India FTA. But when you have Myanmar, you have ASEAN-India FTA. So two separate type of free trade agreement, works. So these are the areas, and I find that electrical and electronics, including the manufacturing of, electrical equipment, it's come very well, where is the market for northeastern region, West Bengal and Bangladesh. Details I can supply to Sunilji if it's required. And there are many other, products or services as well. How to unlock such the potentials. The crux is that we need to improve the cross-border connectivity, sending goods from the factory in the northeast or Calcutta, either using by air or maritime or by road. And I will spend few projects that government of India is doing. 5 projects is integrated check post, which is in More, Dauki and Agartala. Agartala is already operating, and Dauki is coming up. More, ICP integrated check post. Integrated check post, the first one that India did under the Ministry of Home Affairs, it is in Atari, with Pakistan. Because, when you land in the border post, you will find customs is here, quarantine here, other guy is sitting there, that guy is sitting there, passport officer here, so you get, lost. So what we did, we put all of them under single windows, one roof. We call it integrated check post. And all our border posts, if any foreign nationals coming to India, they have to route it in a single queue so that we can monitor him with electronically, and we can give him better service, better facilities, so that they don't have to be harassed at all. So More is, I believe it is ready, but maybe it is inaugurated very soon. Chittagong, Bangladesh has given, their parliament just last month, they have ratified and given access to the northeast. You need to speak to your custom house agent or shipping agent or your freight forwarders to look at the Chittagong port. Can we use it